Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So this is really an experimental program. We threw this out to see what would happen. A little booster shot before Pesach. We tried this, if you remember Rosh Hashanah time, we had Be a Better You, short 20-minute segments of various presentations. We thought that worked pretty well. We'll try it again for Pesach, and I'm very excited to have lined up a nice lineup for tonight. First, I very much thank Vicki, Szyf for offering to come and to present, getting ready for some thoughts on the Haggadah, as well as our scholar residents that we've had all Shabbos, Rabbi Gedalyah Berger. And then for those of you who are still here at the end, I'll tie it all together with something to do to make your Seder great again, with a little game and activity to engage everybody. But first, the real learning. And for that, I hand it over to Murder Szyf and Rabbi Berger. B'chavod.
Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Freundlich. It was so funny. I saw Rabbi Berger. I heard the name and I said, that sounds familiar. 19 years ago, Rabbi Berger was a scholar in residence in Berger for Shavuot. And him and his wife stayed in my house. And I remember his wife being pregnant. It was his first pregnancy. He told me his daughter is 18 now. So we meet again.
Four more.
Hi, Jude. Okay, when we think about Pesach, we usually think about number 4. We know that for Kushiyot, Arba Kushiyot, we know about the Arba Banim, we know about 4 names for the Chag, and Pesach is usually around 4. But I would like to focus today on a half. And we will discuss and we'll find out that this Leil Seder is all about 2 halves. Just last week in the staff room, 2 English teachers were talking to each other, and they were asking, one of them asked the other, are you doing the entire Seder or just the half? So, and we all know what the half is, usually around Shulchan Aruch, and I remember myself even, I feel bad to say it, but this is what it was. I remember that when everybody was excited, we read the Haggadah at the beginning, the Makot, Arba Banim, and after the meal, we benched, but I remember myself helping my mother to put food away, to take care of stuff, and at some point we joined for all the rest of the, whatever they were saying to the end that was everlasting, the long Hallel. So the question is, what's the difference between the two? Different families have different dynamics. Some family put lots of emphasis at the beginning, on the first half, and share lots of Divrei Torah, and then after the meal, say the rest of the Seder, but maybe not with the same excitement. And some families would avoid even saying lots of Divrei Torah in the first half. And the idea is that to learn you can do starting 30 Yom Lifnei HaChag. But the Seder that will go through the Magid, but then put full excitement and energy in the second half of the Seder. And everybody has their own way of managing the Seder. The question is, if we look, there's a lot of half in the Seder. So we're going to learn together and see that, first of all, many paragraphs in the Haggadah have 2 halves. We know that we break the matzah, we break the middle matzah. In English we say break the matzah, which is more correct. In Hebrew we say yachatz. Yachatz comes from the shorosh chatza, lachatzot, chetzi, to cut into half. And we know that you shouldn't cut it exactly into half. And that's something to keep in mind. And we know also the Hallel. We take the Hallel and we break it into half. Half is at the end of Magid. It's before Motzi Matzah, Maror, Koreh, Shulchan Aruch. And the second half of Hallel comes only later, after the meal. And again, the question is why? And it's not 2 even halves. So I would like to start with the first source that I copied from the Haggadah that we all know by heart. Halach Ma'anya. We all know it by heart. Halach Ma'anya diachalu avatana be'arad Mitzrayim. We're pointing to the matzah and say, this is the bread that we ate long time ago in Mitzrayim. Kol dichfin yeteh v'yichol, kol ditzrich yeteh v'yifsach. And then we say something very strange. It has nothing to do with the story of Pesach. We say, Hashata hacha leshana haba'a barad Yisrael. This year right here, Next year, Bezrat Hashem will be in Israel. Hashata Avdei, this year we're slaves, Leshana Haba, B'nei Chori, next year we'll be free in Israel. What does this have to do with Pesach? I mean, Pesach, we know that there is a mitzvah to sit around the matzah, when the matzah and maror munachim lefanecha, in front of you, and to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. So the first part, okay, this is the bread that we ate when we were slaves. We are here now, next year in Israel. This has nothing to do with Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. This is like two different halves of different time in history. The first half talks about the past, talks about what happened in Mitzrayim. The second half is like a wish for the future. Now we're here, but next year we'll be in Israel. Now we're slaves, next year we'll be free. B'nei Chorim. So here's one half that we have, and we have to ask ourselves, how come this is in here? When we talked about the Hallel, so where is the Hallel actually split? The Hallel is split into two halves, not equal halves. The first two paragraphs of the Hallel that being said before we eat the matzah and the Shulchan Aruch, etc. This is only the first two paragraphs. Betzet Israel mi Mitzrayim. This Hallel talks about what happened in Mitzrayim. This is what we call Hallel HaMitzri. And this is relevant. This is what happened in Mitzrayim. The second half of the Hallel, which is a bigger half, it's really, we have in mind the future. When we say, Hodu Hashem ki tov ki lo olam chasdo, and we go on and on and on and get excited and praise Hashem, not only about what he did in Mitzrayim, Lesichon melech ha'emori, le'og melech ha'bashan, everything that he did for us. And that's really talking about the future. But we have to keep in mind that the bigger half is for the future. And what about the matzah that we break? We don't break it into two equal halves. When do we keep the bigger half for? The second part of the Seder, which represent, again, the smaller part, we can say represent what we had in Mitzrayim, lechem oni, the poor bread, bread of poor people. The bigger part we keep for the future, because this is really, 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 if we think about the future and the Geula le'atid lavo, the redemption for the future, this is what we're accepting, a bigger part, a bigger Geula. If we look for a second at the second source on the page, on the bottom of page 1, there's very interesting. We know that the main mitzvah, one of the 4 mitzvot of Leil HaSeder, is Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And this is actually the 2 mitzvot mideoraita from the Torah and 2 mitzvot miderabanan from the Chachamim. And to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is a mitzvah mideoraita. It's a mitzvah from the Torah. And many questions are being asked, so where is the bracha? How come we don't start the Seder? We say, Asher Gidishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lesaper Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. If it's a mitzvah mideoraita, mitzvah from the Torah, we have to say a bracha. So the bracha is there, but actually at the end of Magid. So let's look at the bracha. It's actually the bracha of the Seder, Birkat HaSeder. It's the bracha that comes at the end of Magid. And the bracha goes the following. I read the Hebrew, and feel free to follow with the English. ברוך אתה השם אלוקינו מלך העולם, אשר גאלנו וגאל את אבותינו. We bless Hashem who redeemed us and redeemed our forefathers ממצרים. Refer to the גאולה of מצרים. והגיענו ללילה הזה לאכול בו מצה ומרור. And now we're here to eat the matzah ומרור. All of a sudden, it switched to the second half. כן השם אלוקינו ואלוקי אבותינו יגיענו למועדים. So too, Lord our God and God of our ancestors, bring us to other מועדים. Bring us למועדים ולרגלים אחרים הבאים לקראתנו for the future, holidays to the future, רגל, 3 רגלים הבאים לקראתנו, שמחים בבניין עירך וששים בעבודתך. We will be happy when we will be זוכה in the future when you bring us to בית המקדש, ונאכל שם מן הזבחים והמהפסחים. We'll be able to eat from the זבח and from קורבן פסח, אשר יגיע דמם על קיר מזבחך לרצון, that all the blood will be on the מזבח, and בעזרת השם in the future we'll be זוכה to be there in בית המקדש. נודה לך שיר חדש על גאולתנו ועל פדות נפשנו. We're going to sing to you Hashem. We're going to praise you Hashem. Wait a second. If the mitzvah was to tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, if the mitzvah was for the past, we should have focused on the past. The bracha is that thank you Hashem for taking us out of Mitzrayim. So we have half referred to the past, and then, but by the way, Hashem, we really want to be zocher for the Geula that will come in the future. The Geula will come לעתיד לבוא, and when we finish the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. We're going back to the past, because the main bracha is to say it for what happened in Mitzrayim. So with the bracha is Ga'al Yisrael. Thank you Hashem for redeeming us, for us being redeemed. You redeemed us in the past. But while we say the bracha for the Seder, the main bracha about Tzipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, we stick in a paragraph that we're thinking about the Geula in the Atid, the Geula for the future. And if we stop for a second and we think this bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, we know it from where? Shmona Esrei. Just before Shmona Esrei, we're talking about Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. So let's compare and see. Let's go to the second page at the very bottom. Ezrat Avotenu. This is from the Sidur. This is the paragraph that we say just before Shmona Esrei, just before Amidah. Ezrat Avotenu, Ata Me'olam, etc. And I cut the paragraph. Let's go to page number 3, and on the top. תהילות לאל עליון, ברוך הוא מבורך, משה ובני ישראל הכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם. What are we talking here? משה ובני ישראל לך אמרו שירה. פסח מצרים, יציאת מצרים. We're talking about יציאת מצרים. מי כמוך בעלים השם, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמך על שפת הים. That's ים סוף. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, השם ימלוך לעולם ועד. Continue. Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael. So it's clear that these two brachot are talking about the same thing. Here in the tefillah, it's clear that we're talking about Mitzrayim. ממצרים גאלתנו, משה ובני ישראל הכנו שירה. Moshe ובני ישראל said the שירה after they crossed the Yam Suf. And Ga'al Yisrael. And in the previous paragraph that we had from the bracha, that the one that inside the Haggadah, that end with Ga'al Yisrael, the first half we talk about Mitzrayim, but the second half we're talking about the future when we come to Beit HaMikdash. כן השם אלוקינו ואלוקי אבותינו יגיענו למועדים. The same way we were zoche to be part of that Geula, we're looking forward to be part of the future Geula, to be in Beit HaMikdash. There's one big difference. Hey, Mazal Tov. There's one big difference between the two paragraphs that I'm just going to touch it, but we'll discuss it later. When we talk about the song that Bnei Israel were singing, how do we call it? Shirat Hayam. We're talking about it as a shira. And several places it's mentioned as shira. If we look at the second page in the middle, אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לשם ויאמרו לאמור. We refer to it as a shira. And if we look at page number 3, the one that we just discussed, on the third line, משה ובני ישראל לך ענו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם. And we're going a little down the paragraph that we talked about. שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפתיהם. We talk about שירה. Yam Suf is connected with Shira, and that's why we call it Shirat Hayam. It's Shira. Let's go back to Birkat HaSeder on the top of the second page. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth like this. ונודה לך שיר חדש. שיר חדש. מה זה שיר? We were talking about Shira. We saw at least 5-6 times Shira. It was all about Shira, Shirat Hayam. And here we're talking about Nodeh Lecha Shir Chadash. So we know that the two paragraphs talks about Yetziat Mitzrayim. They both ends with Ga'al Yisrael. But, well, the one that we say before Amidah, that talks purely only about Yetziat Mitzrayim, we're talking about Shira. The one that we have here, in Leil HaSeder, just before we take out the matzah, when we summarize and say the bracha for Magid about Tzipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, we say shir. We'll figure out why. So it's very, very, very clear that Leil Seder, we feel, I don't have to say the tension between the past and the future, the dialogue between the Geula of Mitzrayim and the Geula of Atid Lavo. And it appears in many symbolic things that we do, the matzah, the bigger part for the future, the Hallel, the bigger part for the future, even the bracha of the Seder for Tzipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, part for the past and part for the future. And I would like to share with you, there is a piyut for that we say in Pesach. You know that Rabbi Freundlich was talking on Monday about Rabbi Soloveitchik. Rabbi Soloveitchik was very big on saying piyutim. Piyutim are pieces of poetry that were inserted inside the tefillah. Sometimes it was in Ma'ariv, it just before Zulatech Hasela, or sometimes it was in Shachrit, just before Yotzer HaMeorot. There are different piyutim that were Yotzrot, and there are different piyutim that were inserted inside the tefillah, and the beauty was to enhance the tefillah with what's special and what's relevant for today. So in the shul in Maimonides shul, where we davened there, we were there in 85. That's when my husband did a postdoctorate there. And we davened, and Rabbi Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, was very makpid on saying the piyutim in shul. Not only that, in the school, in Maimonides school where I taught, it was a course that is called Bi'ur HaTfilah, and the rabbi who gave that course, one of the things that he put an emphasis in, that was because Rabbi Soloveitchik was asked to do that, is to teach the piyutim. And I remember he used to say, Arvit is Arvit all year round. You know, every time we say, Amariv Aravim, Avat Olam Ahavta, the Shkriyat Shema, the Amidah. What makes it special? It must be the piyutim, and how can we skip it? Here in Montreal, unfortunately, none of the shuls are saying, we are so machmir not to have hefsek in the tefillah, so we don't say the piyutim. Aval, for those who like the piyutim, good news, the Bells community started sneaking into Kod St. Luke, and there is a shtibel, a shul on Hudson, and they say the piyutim. So I know because my husband one time in Shabbat Zachor, he went in the snow, and Shabbat Shkalim, he went in the pouring rain, because our minhag in my house, we always say the piyutim on the table. Whether it's the Maraviyot or the Yotzrot, we always say it on the table. And this is, we got it from, I don't know if it's from the time we've been in Boston, or maybe my husband had this minhag even before. But he terrorized the kids, because it's a very poetry, it's a very difficult Hebrew. It's not what we do in class, Gavi. Okay, so but it's challenging, it's beautiful to see. So, and it's in all the ArtScroll Sidurim. I didn't went to Geniza or to places to look for it. It's ArtScroll Sidur. You have the piyutim. They're usually the page is a little bit in grayish, but it's there. And the piyut, if we look at it for a second, we do page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you look at page 5, I photographed it from the article, you can see. But what's nice about it, you see on the right side, that's the piyut for the 7th night, on the left side for the 8th night. And I circled the kind of the chorus. There's blah, 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 Pesach Mitzrayim, blah, 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 Pesach Le'atid. So one of them is, if you follow with the English, one of them talks about the Pesach of Egypt, on the left side is the English, and Pesach of the future. So we see that the essence of Pesach was, for the poets, was we don't only celebrate what happened in Mitzrayim, but we always have to think about Pesach Le'atid. And all the information, all the verses are actually taken, whatever is talking about Pesach Mitzrayim is taken from Sefer Shemot, where we're being told about Pesach in Mitzrayim, what happened, about Kriyat Yam Suf, about Shirat Hayam. And all the psukim about Pesach Le'atid for the future are being taken actually from Sefer Yeshayahu And this is actually Yeshayahu, the paragraph that we read for Haftarah on the 8th day of Pesach. It's for a reason that we read from that paragraph. Because Yeshayahu, what he's saying, if I'll just paraphrase in a few words, Yeshayahu Navi Omer telling Bnei Israel, you remember the miracles of Mitzrayim? That's nothing in comparison to what's going to be in the future. And the Navi Yeshayahu, if you look at one page back, or even 2 pages back, you see Yeshayahu 1, 2, 3. Third page at the middle, at the bottom, Yeshayahu. You can follow with the English, please. V'haya bayom hahu. Bayom hahu. Every time you say bayom hahu is when? Yemot HaMashiach. Bayom hahu is always. Bayom hahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad is for the future. Yeshayahu says, V'haya bayom hahu Yosif Hashem sheinit. For the second time, we'll have the same miracles. And then he keep on going. Hashem is going to gather all the people, Me'ashur, Me'mitzrayim, Me'patros. Hashem will gather everybody. And again, Mitzrayim is mentioned. And later on it says, Ve'cherim Hashem et leshon yam Mitzrayim. Hashem will dry up the yam of Mitzrayim. You see how Yeshayahu is talking about, referring to the Gedalyah of Mitzrayim. But later on he says, again, כאשר הייתה לישראל ביום עלותו מארץ מצרים, ישעיהו refers to מצרים, but he continues in saying, ואמרת ביום ההוא, in the future, all these things will happen again in the future, and he refers to psukim, ישעיהו refers to psukim משירת הים, עוזי וזמרת ים, ויהי לי לישועה, that's שירת הים, that ישעיהו quotes. זמרו השם כי גאות עשה, גאו גאה, that's שירת הים. So Yeshayahu is telling us that all the miracles that happened in the past will be even multiple and bigger and more impressive at the time of the Geula לעתיד לבוא. There's one piece that we have to figure out. So we understand that Seder is we have to think כל הזמן about both. Not only the story of Mitzrayim, but to get excited about the future Geula. In our house, unlike when I grew up, but in my house now, of course we say the Magid with all the respect and all the kavod, but we do not go too much in length because we really want to save the energy for the second part of the Seder. And by us, remember, we talk about the Hallel of the Rav. In my house, by us, it's the same. When we get to the part that it's the Hallel, we sing, if there are 3 different tunes for one melody, we sing 3 different songs. And we continue, and we're singing. And then after the Seder, we say Shir HaShirim, which is the ultimate Geula that we're waiting for. So this is really, so what happened, and we recognize and have to remember it, and the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. But when we celebrate, we're trying to get excited about what we're looking forward to. There's one last question that we didn't solve, and that's the difference between, in Mitzrayim it always says Shira. דכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, שירת הים, and the bracha of the Seder, we say, ונודה לך שיר חדש. How come all of a sudden it's turned into a shir? So let's look at the last page, and this is also from the Piyut. But this is from the Piyut for Shachrit. And the Piyut goes, he said that there were 10 shirot. There were actually 9 shirot until now. 9 types of shira. And it starts, the different piyutim or different midrashim count them differently. Whether one from Adam HaRishon, and they talk about the one in Pesach, they talk about the shira of Shlomo HaMelech and David HaMelech, and the shira of the Be'er in the desert. It talks about different shirot. But it says the following, and it says like this. Kol shirot tesha. Please follow with the English. And it's alphabetic, by the way, you see it's alphabetic, and I start just for the end of the piyut. Kuf, Kol shirot, and on the left side, find the line that it has the letter Kuf, the sound of 9 songs. Have you heard with pleasure? Pleasant. Okay, I prefer the Hebrew. Okay. So, the Paitan says the following. Kol shirot tesha shamanu b'meretz. We heard already in the past the 9 shirot with excitement, with merit. V'ha'asirit, and the 10th now, the 10th one, od nishma. It will be for the future. עוד נשמע מכנף הארץ. This 10th שירה we haven't heard yet. This we're going to hear in the future. רונו שמיים והריעו תחתיות ארץ. שירו להשם שיר חדש. תהילתו מקצה הארץ. And then he said the following. שירות אלה, the nine שירות that happened already in the past, לשון שירה מיוסדים. We refer to them as שירה. כי תשועתם כיולדה לבוא צרות ומספדים. On purpose, they're in feminine. It's like yoleda, it's like a woman who's giving birth. When you give birth, it comes with pain. It comes with agony sometimes until you have the baby coming out. אבל, תוקף, look at the letter תף. תוקף שיר אחרון. The last song that we haven't heard yet. This is ונודה לך שיר חדש. That's for the future. כי זכרים לא יולדים. This is in masculine. This is like זכרים. They don't give birth. When the father comes, he's a baby. מה זאת? What did he do for that? לחיים. So, כי זכרים לא יולדים. שירו להשם שיר חדש, תהילתו בקהל חסידים. So we see that in the Seder, in Birkat Seder, when you say the bracha for Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, we start with the past. We wish for the future, but in that moment, and we know that we are supposed to say Shira Chadasha, everything in the Torah says, no. In the future, ונודה לך שיר חדש. Because we want the Geula that will be in the future, the Geula לעתיד לבוא, to come without any pain. That will really, may all of us be zocher to be in that Geula. Chag Sameach.
Amazing. Okay, so our second installment of Rabbi Gedalyah Berger, we've had the opportunity to hear from several times throughout Shabbos. A similar, but I assume a little different take on splitting of the Hallel. I have sheets here, let me pass them out. You have your own copy or you need one?
So I could not have asked for a better act to follow, except in the sense that I don't know if I'm going to succeed in matching the beauty of that Dvar Torah that we just heard. But as Rabbi Freundlich mentioned, the topic that I'm talking about actually integrates beautifully with the top. Oh, should I not be moving around because of the? Okay, beautifully with what you just heard. In fact, in a sense, the introduction of the fact that the Seder involves so many splits into halves will help introduce this topic in a even better way than I had imagined. It'll save me some time. And we're actually going to come back briefly to the theme that was just developed for a couple of minutes later on, but we're generally speaking going to be developing a different theme here, and we're going to be focusing specifically on Hallel. So let's begin by taking a look at the Mishnah in Maseches Pesachim here in source number 1, that talks about where exactly do we split the Hallel. The Hallel is divided in half, some of it at the end of Magid and some of it later after benching. But where exactly do we split it? And the Mishnah actually tells us that there was a debate about that. So the Mishnah says, and this Mishnah is familiar language because we say it at the Seder itself, in every generation, every person must see himself as if he left Egypt. And therefore, because we have to view ourselves as if we are leaving Egypt, that generates an obligation for us to be grateful, since if we imagine ourselves as experiencing the redemption ourselves, we naturally have to express gratitude and praise to Hashem for having provided us with that redemption. So later on, the Mishnah asks the question, Ad Heichan Hu Omer? At that point, at the end of Magid, when we're starting Hallel, up until what point of Hallel do we say? Beit Shammai Omrim Ad Eim Habanim Smecha, Uveit Hillel Omrim Ad Chalamish L'maynu Mayim. So the practice which we are familiar with, of course following the position of Beis Hillel as we always do, is that at the end of Magid we say, as it says here, until Chalamish L'maynu Mayim. We say the first two paragraphs of Hallel, including the first one, Hallelu Ka'alu Avdei Hashem, and the second one, B'tzeit Yisrael Mi Mitzrayim. Beis Shammai, however, disagreed, Beis Shammai's position was that you actually stopped after the first paragraph, only said the first paragraph at the end of Magid until Im Habanim Smecha Halaluka, and the B'tzeit Yisrael Mitzrayim was what he thought one should begin with later on, after benching later on in the Haggadah. And so we're going to come back later to the question of what underlies this dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. What understanding of what's going on here motivated this particular debate. But what's so fascinating to me about this Mishnah is that the Mishnah never says that one is supposed to split up Halal at the Seder. If you try to find a source for the practice of splitting Halal at the Seder, as far as I know, you will never find it. The Mishnah takes for granted that Halal is being split and only discusses exactly where should it be split. But the question of why do we split it to begin with is never addressed. And before we come back to resolve that question of why, one of the approaches is going to be the one you just heard a few minutes ago. I want to take a bit of a detour, and that is to ask the following question. This is really a topic about which a tremendous amount has been written. Most of the great Rishonim wrote literally pages and pages about this topic, but I just want to focus on it very, very briefly. And that is a different question about Hallel at the Seder. The question was mentioned before, why don't we make a bracha on Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim? Which is an interesting question. But there's also another question. Why don't we make a bracha on Hallel at the Seder? Every other time that we say Hallel, we make a bracha. Asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu likro et Hallel. Or if there are any Sephardim in the room, ligmor et Hallel. But when we sit at the Seder and we say Hallel, we don't make a bracha. Why not? So as I mentioned, this is a really vast topic, but I just want to look very briefly at the two sources we have in front of you. Source number 2, the Rashba, one of the Rishonim on the Gemara and Masechet Brachot, says the following: Lamadnu mikan lahalel shebeleli psachim shemevarchin alav. From the Gemara that he was talking about, he says one can learn that you in fact should make a bracha on Hallel at the Seder. V'chein nahagu tzat min harabanim achronim, and in fact, there were some Rabbanim and their communities had the practice of making the same bracha that we say on Hallel normally at the beginning of Hallel at the Seder. If you skip for a moment down to source number 3 before we continue in source number 2, there's a Tosfot also in Maseches Brachos that says V'leilei Psachim, on the night of Pesach yesh shemevarchim pa'amayim. There were some who had the practice not only of making a bracha on Hallel at the Seder, but of making a bracha on Hallel at the Seder twice, because in fact we split up the Hallel at the Seder. So they would make a bracha batchila likrot before they started Hallel at the end of Magid. They would make a bracha asher kedeshanu b'tzosav v'tzivanu likrot et Hallel. Say the first couple of paragraphs, and then have the matzah and the maror and the meal and the benching, and then when they got back to Hallel again, they would make another bracha. This time, V'achar ha'suda, after the meal, achar shefoch, after the paragraph of shefoch chamascha al hagoyim, mevarchin ligmor. They would make another bracha, ligmor as Hallel. So this, according to this opinion, the splitting of the Hallel actually generated a second bracha on the Hallel, a rather unusual practice. So far we've seen that there was one practice to make a bracha. There was another practice to make two brachos. Let's return now to source number 2, the end of the first line in the Hebrew and the middle of the second line in the English. Aval ha-gaonim zal, but some of the gaonim, among them Rav Tzemach, Rav Yosef, Rav Yitzchak ben Geit Zatzal, some of the very early Gedolim and the prior to and in the very earlier period of the Rishonim, Hiskimu, they all agreed she'im mevarchin alav achshav b'halal shekorin b'bayis, that we in fact do not make a bracha on the halal that we say at home at the Seder. So, but now the question is why? We always make a bracha on Hallel. Why not make a bracha on Hallel at the Seder? So the reason they gave was mipnei shecholkin oso be'emtza. The reason that we don't make a bracha is because we split up the Hallel. And since you're splitting it in half, you're never really saying the whole thing all at once. So how can you make a bracha on that? You're interrupting in the middle. The sense is that since you're not really doing it right, you're kind of messing up the Hallel. You can't really make a bracha. You can't make a bracha at the beginning because you're not going to say the whole thing, and you can't make it at the end because you already said some of it before. So for that reason, we jettison the bracha of Hallel altogether. The implication being that we really kind of should have said a bracha, but because of the way we do it, we're compelled to not say a bracha. And that, of course, is the universal practice among Jews today, and has been, in fact, for at least, I think at least 700 years. I'm not sure exactly how much longer than that. The universal practice has been to not make any brachos on Hallel at the Seder. Before we read the next couple of lines, let me just highlight, and this is the first main reason that I introduced this issue of the bracha, is that this highlights the problem that we're trying to resolve even further in a much more profound way. We raised the question at the beginning, why do we split Hallel to begin with? Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue about where, but nobody ever explained why we should split it to begin with. And here we find out that the splitting of the Hallel actually messes things up, right? The splitting of the Hallel made us have to rewrite the other halachos of Hallel with regard to the bracha. Some people were forced to say 2 brachos, some people, and in fact our practice is because of this we don't say a bracha at all. So the splitting of the Hallel apparently is pretty important. It's important enough that we do it despite the fact that it messes up the normal practices that we would normally have with Hallel. And it always bothered me that I mentioned to you that this is just a couple of lines, but that there are pages and pages and pages written about this issue of the bracha on Hallel at the Seder, and so much was written about that, and almost nothing has been written about the underlying issue of why do we split Hallel at the Seder to begin with. It's a very strange phenomenon in the literature on this topic. Okay, let's continue in the second half of this Rashba, and we will see one other aspect of this bracha discussion, which introduces an important element about Hallel at the Seder. Starting right in the middle. V'chein heshiv Rav Haizal. Rav Haigon also wrote about this, and he said, "Shadvarim kamo she'amar Rav Tzemach," like Rav Tzemach said, "she'ein mevarchin alav b'leil Pesachim ligmor." We don't make the bracha on Hallel at the Seder. Ve'ein, but why? So he doesn't just refer to the fact that you split the Seder. He gives a different reason. This is a very famous comment by Rav Haigon, a very profound statement about the Seder. Ve'ein anu korin oso b'torat korin, ela b'torat omrim shira. When we say Hallel at the Seder, we're not saying Hallel in the sense of we have a mitzvah to say Hallel, so we're reading the Hallel. We're not reading it, but rather we're singing. We're omrim shira. What do you think he means by that? Normally, when we say Hallel, we're reading it. Because normally when we're saying Hallel, there's an event. Sorry, you want to?
Yeah, because all the splitting of the sin, everything else is related to Shira.
Okay, but in what way? Why is it that on Pesach in the morning when we say Hallel, that's normal, that's we're reading Hallel. But Pesach at night, when we're saying Hallel, we're singing.
Because usually it should not be said at night.
But so then why are we saying it now? Yeah.
Maybe when you say it in the morning, you're reading it because you're giving you're thinking about something and you're having an expression of thanks. But at night, at the Seder, you're actually experiencing
Exactly. Okay? Exactly. Right? The Hallel, says Rav Haigon, that we say on Sukkot and on Pesach morning and on Shavuos and on Hanukkah, right? All of these times we say Hallel because something happened a long time ago, and we have a mitzvah to commemorate it on its anniversary, and we pick up the book to read which tefillah do we say today in order to express our gratitude and praise to Hashem for that thing that happened long ago. That's a mitzvah of kriya. So we make a bracha, likrot et Hallel. But Hallel at the Seder, we just said, b'chol dor v'dor, the first line on the page, chayav adam lirot et asmo kilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. At the Seder, we are supposed to be experiencing the Geula, experiencing the redemption. And if that's the mindset that we're in, when we say Hallel at the Seder, we're not reading it. We are spontaneously expressing our gratitude in song to Hashem. And can you imagine, right? If do you think that the people when they were, when they said Hallel at the Seder, at Yetzias Mitzrayim, do they stop for say, let me make a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, right? That almost ruins the whole notion of saying Hallel as a natural and spontaneous expression of gratitude for that experience. The whole point at the Seder is that we shouldn't be saying Hallel only because it's written there in the book. We should, once we've experienced Yetzias Mitzrayim, we should spontaneously express ourselves in song, and that's the way in which we say Hallel at the Seder. And so on. So that is an additional reason why Rav Haigon says we don't make a bracha on Hallel at the Seder. Okay, so with that background in the bank, okay, that there's a mitzvah to say Hallel at the Seder, that for some reason we're supposed to divide it in half, that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree about exactly where we split it, and that this is so important that it for the way in our practice it resulted in our not saying a bracha, perhaps, and also with this idea of Hallel as a spontaneous shira in our quiver. Let's now go to address the question that we started with, which is why is Hallel split to begin with? And if you turn to the other side of the page, you will see that is the first line of that page. V'lama chokin et Hallel. Why do we split the Hallel? This, as far as I know, is the earliest source that ever asks that question. The Avudraham, who was a Rishon who wrote an important book on the Tfilos in general. And he asks this question. He gives a very surprising answer, which I always found a little bit odd, but it's interesting to see. He says the following: the reason we split up the Hallel is kidei lahader bo et kol sheni. And this is going to dovetail a lot with what you said before, because we want something to make the second cup of wine that we drink special. Shekos rishon mahadri b'kiddush. The first kos we make it special by saying kiddush over that kos. The kos sheni mahadri b'miktzas hallel, and the second kos we make it special by saying part of Hallel on it. But why wasn't the Magid good enough? Why did we need some of Hallel? Shehahagada ina ela sipur dvarim ba'alma. Haggadah? That's just storytelling. Haggadah is not so important. All you're doing is telling a story. Sorry?
Why shouldn't we complete the Hallel?
Okay, so this is what he's going to say. So the Haggadah is not important enough to have a kos. The kos shlishi mahadri b'virkat hamazon, and the third bracha you make special by benching. The kos revi'i mahadri b'hashlamat hallel, and the fourth cup we finished. In other words, Chazal they needed to have 4 cups, as Rabbi Freundlich talked about between Mincha and Ma'ariv earlier. We needed to have 4 cups, but they were looking for things to make each one of the cups special, and they could only find 3. So they could only find 3. They decided to split up the Hallel. So you have some of Hallel on one and some of Hallel on the other. I always found this answer somewhat unsatisfying for 2 reasons. Number one, that's a pretty strange thing to do, to split up the Hallel. Couldn't they have found something else, right? And furthermore, the idea that the Haggadah is like this nothing on the Seder night, when that's like the centerpiece mitzvah of the whole night, is to tell the story. I mean, telling the story is just storytelling. That's the whole mitzvah. It's repeated like 4 times in the Torah that we have such an important mitzvah. But presumably he's calling attention to the fact that if all you're doing is telling the story without some emotion and your soul somehow infused and injected into it, then that's not important enough. And therefore some Hallel is necessary in order to give significance to that kos. Okay, in any case, that's his answer. That's why we split the Hallel, is for this somewhat secondary reason, because we need to provide something for each one of the kosos, each one of the cups. The next answer is the answer of the levush. Excuse me. And the levush was an author who wrote right around. He was a contemporary of the Shulchan Aruch. This is in the late 16th, century. He writes. He also addresses this question head on, and he says the following: Tam chalukas ha'halel. The reason for the splitting of the halal, mipnei the chatzi halal the kodim haseuda medaber hakol b'yetzias mitzrayim. First, the half of the halal at the beginning, before we eat, that talks about Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim. V'shayach l'chol ha'agada shekodem ha'seuda da'ari kula b'tzias Mitzrayim. And that's relevant, that part of Hallel is relevant to the first part of the Seder, which is talking entirely about Yetzias Mitzrayim, Aval Chatzi Hallel ha'acharon. But the second half of Hallel, which is the majority of it, V'gam rov siprei ha'agada she'achar ha'suda, and also all the other stuff that we say in the Haggadah after the meal, which is a reference to Nirtza, right? All of the piyutim that we say in Nirtza, those medabrim bishar ha'geula, so geula ha'asida, those talk about other redemptions and the future redemption, l'chach kiva'um yachad achar ha'suda, and that's why that part of Hallel was inserted at the end, together with the portion of the Seder that is in fact about the future geula. Okay, so and that is an idea that you've already heard developed beautifully, so I'm not going to pursue that line of thought any further. What I'd like to spend the rest of our time doing is developing an additional approach to understanding why Hallel is split at the Seder, and to draw that approach out of something that the sources do tell us about that little detail in the debate between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And that's the last source here, the Tosefta, which is a collection of material that expands on the Mishnah. And this Tosefta records a conversation between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So again, just to remind ourselves, Beis Shammai said that we should stop after the first paragraph, before B'tzeit Yisrael mitzrayim, and Beis Hillel says we stop after the second paragraph, after we said already B'tzeit Yisrael mitzrayim. Amru Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, V'chi kvar yatzu shemazkirin Yetzias Mitzrayim? He said, how could you at the end of Magid, how could you say B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim? Have they already left? Did the Jewish people already leave at that point? So what does that mean? I mean, did the Jewish people already leave? We finished the whole story, right? We told the story of the Jewish people leaving Mitzrayim. Beis Shammai is somehow implying you can't say B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim yet because it's not time yet. The Jews haven't left Mitzrayim yet. So it's not clear what that means. Let's hold off for a minute. Amru lahem Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel said back to them, wait a second. Afilu hu mamtinat kiros hagever. Even if you wait to say Hallel until the rooster crows, until the morning, hare elu lo yatzu ad sheishos bayom. What do you want to do? You want to wait until the time when the Jewish people actually left Mitzrayim, where it says the 15th of Nisan, right? The 15th of Nisan was the day of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So Beis Hillel says to Beis Shammai, you say we can't say it at the end of Magid because the Jews haven't left yet? Well, if you want to wait till the time that the Jews left, they left in the middle of the day. Right? In the Emtza Hayom. Sheish Sha'ot Bayom at noon. So according to you, Heich Omer HaGeula Vadam, what do you do? When do you say B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim? Beis Hillel says to Beis Shammai. When do you say it? After benching, right? After benching is also too early, according to you. You think you have to wait till the Jewish people left? You have to wait till tomorrow. So what are you talking about, Beis Shammai? That's what Beis Hillel says to them. Okay, so what's going on? Right. So what did Beis Shammai mean? What did Beis Shammai mean? So Beis Shammai, I think, meant something that which relates to something very profound about the Seder, and it's an appendix, if you will, to the first shir that you heard tonight. Why does Beis Shammai think that at the end of Magid you can't say B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim because the Jews haven't left yet, but when you get to after benching, you can say B'tzeis Yisrael mitzrayim because the Jews have left? Which Jews is he talking about? Sorry?
Us.
Exactly. Right? What did we say before when we talked about Rav Haigon? V'chol dor v'dor chayav aram liros es asmo kil yatsa mitzrayim. At the Seder, every Jew has to experience as if I am leaving Mitzrayim. So what Beis Shammai is saying, and the Hallel we say is an expression of song based on that experience. Beis Shammai is pointing to the following question. When during the Seder does that happen? When during the Seder are we supposed to be experiencing the sense that we left Mitzrayim? When does that happen? When does that happen? Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Magid, Rachza, Motzi, Matzah. Right? When does it happen? So Beis Shammai is highlighting that our Seder is in fact divided into two parts. Right? The first part is Magid. In Magid we're not experiencing anything. Magid, we are telling the story. Right? When are we experiencing something? When are we doing the same things that the Jews who left Mitzrayim did? Well, when we eat matzah and maror, and once upon a time, in the Mirza Hashem, soon in the future, the Korban Pesach, right? It's the middle of the Seder, which is the part of the Seder during which we are doing the same things that the Jews of the time in Mitzrayim did that night, and experiencing together with them Yetzias Mitzrayim. So Beis Shammai is saying, how can you say the Hallel B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim at the end of Magid? V'chi kvar yatzu? Did they leave Mitzrayim yet? No. All he did was tell a story. When can you actually say B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim? That you can say after you've eaten, after you've done all of those other mitzvos, after the Korban Pesach. Then, right, when Beis Shammai said, we're having this conversation, there was still a Korban Pesach. Okay? Then you can say B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. And Beis Hillel's response is that Beis Hillel apparently didn't view the Seder that way. Beis Hillel said to them, well, if you really want to wait till they actually left, you have to wait till tomorrow. But Beis Hillel felt that Beis Shammai is giving short shrift to Magid. Beis Shammai thinks that Magid, we're not actually experiencing Yetzias Mitzrayim yet. And Beis Hillel's response to that is no. Right? And I'm sure some people maybe some of you experience the Seder more like Beis Shammai, and some of you experience more like Beis Hillel. Right? Beis Hillel is saying, telling the story of Magid, and sitting with your children and answering their questions, and talking about all the miracles that happened, that can, in fact, in the human soul, be a profound experience of being able to put ourselves in the shoes of those who left Mitzrayim. And why can't we be experiencing Yetzias Mitzrayim through the vicarious experience of telling the story even during Magid? And so Beis Hillel think that you can say B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim at the end of Magid as well. And that's, of course, in fact, what we do. All that being said, none of this explains why we split the Hallel to begin with, right? Because if you think about what we just explained, the debate between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, so what should the debate have been? Why are they with this Picayune focus on just the paragraph, that one paragraph? If Beis Hillel thinks that the experience was at the end of Magid, so say the whole Hallel at the end of Magid. There's no reason to wait for the rest of it. And Beis Shammai, who thinks that the expression of gratitude has to happen only after you've done the mitzvahs, and that's when the real experience happened. So why are you starting with the first paragraph before? Just do the whole thing later, right? So this doesn't really make any sense. Just don't split it at all. There should be a bigger debate here about when to do it. So I was thinking about this for a while, and I don't remember what made me start to think about this. But I started to look at the entire last chapter of Maseches Pesachim, the 10th chapter of the Gemara, of the Mishnah and Gemara in Maseches Pesachim, which is where all of the halachos of the Seder are. And I began to notice something very interesting, and I hope I can do this in 3 minutes.
You take 5.
Okay. I'm going to do this in much less detail than I if I had 2 hours, I could do 2 hours, but I will just do a few minutes. When you open up a Mishnah or a Gemara, and you read a whole parak, what's the, it's almost a joke, right? If you ask somebody, what's the halacha about case X? The answer is, it's a machlokes, right? Right? It's a debate, right? This rabbi says that, this rabbi says this, somebody says something else. And I began to notice something very unusual about this parak of Mishnah and Gemara that's about the Seder. Let me pick out just a few prominent examples. We have a practice of having the charoses at the Seder. So the Mishnah has a debate. Is the charoses a mitzvah, or is charoses not a mitzvah? But what the Mishnah says is that, according to the opinion that says it's not a mitzvah, you have it at the Seder anyway, even though it's not a mitzvah. Later in the chapter, there's another phenomenon. We know it from our Seder. There's a debate how the Korban Pesach was eaten. Did you eat the Pesach and the matzah and the maror? Right? Or, according to Hillel, right, what did he do? He would wrap it all up together, right? And eat korech, eat all three of them together. What do we do at our Seder? Both. Zecher lemikdash kehillel. There's another debate in the Mishnah. The halacha, when you tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, you're supposed to be maschil bignus and mesayim b'shevach. You're supposed to start with the bad and end with the good. And there's a very, very profound and fundamental debate about what that means. One opinion says that it means you're supposed to start with the slavery and end with the freedom. And the other one says it means you're supposed to start with the sins of our ancestors, the fact that our ancestors were idol worshippers, and end with the shvach, the praise that we became servants of God. Right? Those are the two. What do we do at our Seder? Both. Avadim hayinu lefaro b'Mitzrayim is one genus. Mitchila of avodah zara hayu avoseinu. There's a debate later. One of the things you're supposed to say at the end of the Seder is called Birkat Hashir, the Mishnah says. The Gemara asks, what's Birkat Hashir? So one opinion says it's the bracha of Yehalalucha, the paragraph of Yehalalucha. Another opinion says it means Nishmas Kol Chai. What do we do? Both. And so on and so on. There is almost in the entire parak of Arvei Pesachim, that parak, no machlokas. And when there is a machlokas, we somehow find a way to avoid it, to do both. There are a couple of, if I had time, I would go through all. There are a few things that seem like exceptions, but some of them are just debates that aren't really about the Seder. They're just debates about other things that happen to overlap with the Seder. So, for example, when you say Kiddush, do you say the Beri Priagafen first, or the bracha on the bracha of Kiddush first? Right. So, we, as you know, our practice is we say Beri Priagafen and then the bracha of Kiddush. That's a machlokus between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai said it's the reverse. But that's true for every Kiddush. That has nothing to do with the Seder, right? And so on. There are a couple of other such examples. And I wish I could go on. There's one real counter-example, which relates to the bracha that was being discussed earlier. I'm not going to even go to that because we're going to be out of time in a minute. There's one machlokas in the entire parak, one debate, that really survives for real, that there's nothing we can do about, and that we have to choose. We have to pick one and just do it that way. And that's this machlokas. Machlokas in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Are we going to stop Hallel after the first paragraph, or are we going to stop Hallel after the second paragraph? We can't do both. We have to only do one, and we follow Beis Hillel. But it occurs to me that maybe this is the answer to our question. Beis Shammai thought that the Hallel should be at the end of the Seder, right? Because that's when we've really left Mitzrayim. Beis Hillel thought the Hallel should be at the beginning of the Seder, because that's when we've experienced Yetzias Mitzrayim. And I said, so why wasn't the whole thing at the end according to Beis Shammai, and the whole thing at the beginning according to Beis Shammai? So I wonder, maybe the answer is, yeah, that was their opinion. Beis Shammai really thought the whole thing should be at the end, and Beis Hillel really thought the whole thing should be at the beginning. Why do we split the Hallel? Because Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel didn't want machlokes to be an element of the Seder. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel wanted to go out of their way, just as we see is in fact the case throughout the whole chapter of the Mishnah and the Gemara about the Seder, that there's no debate, and even when there is, we do everything we can to erase it. So Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel said, you know what? We're not going to have a debate where our practice is we do the whole Hallel at the beginning and our practice is the Hallel at the end. We're just going to do our best to make our practices as similar and as close as possible. There's one paragraph in the Hallel that actually explicitly mentions Yetzias Mitzrayim. So, you know what? We'll split it. We'll split the difference. All of us will say half the Hallel at the beginning of the Seder and half the Hallel at the end of the Seder. And the only difference will be this one little paragraph. Beis Shammai will say it has to be at the end. Beis Hillel practice will be it's at the beginning. And Beis Shammai family is over here and the Beis Hillel family is next door. Their Seder is almost the same. Because because what is in fact, and with this I'll conclude, what is in fact the purpose of the Seder? What was the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim? The purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was to be the birth of the Jewish people. There is no time in the entire Jewish year when it is more important that there not be debates, that there not be machlokes, that there not be splits, that there not be I'm doing my thing and you're doing your thing. The Seder is the unifier, the universal ritual of the Jewish people in which everybody is doing the same thing. And that is something that was became a centerpiece of Chazal themselves, thinking and instinct about the Seder, is to always, even if there's a debate, find a way to make it all the same. And it's no accident that of all of the Jewish rituals all the rituals of the Jewish year, the Seder is the one that throughout the world is observed by far more Jews than any other, because the Seder is the creator, if you will, of Jewish peoplehood, and that is reflected in some of the very nitty-gritty halachic details that we discussed tonight. Thank you very much.
Following up with that, there should be peace at our Seder tables. I'm hereby going to decree that all Ashkenazim are now going to eat kidneys from now on. You heard it here first, folks. It's there.
Stop it, kidding.
No. That wouldn't be right. Okay, thank you, Berger. Let me give a little bit of background as to where I'm coming from and as to what problem in my mind this little game/activity that I developed was coming to solve, which I think will help. The problem is as follows, as was mentioned a couple times before me tonight. The primary mitzvah, one of the two primary mitzvahs, the two mitzvahs mid'oraisa that we have from the Torah on this night of the Seder is the Higadat Olabincha. We have the mitzvah of telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim to our children. That is what the night is about. We are supposed to tell the story. Not only are we supposed to tell the story, but as the poskim write with the language of it, it needs to be told, each person, kol echad ve'echad, kefitzachot leshono, each one according to his own or her own ability. So not only do you need to tell the story once at your Seder table, technically speaking, at your Seder table, you might need to tell the story 5, 6, 7 times because each person has to have it being told on their level in order to fulfill the mitzvah, which means some people have had the opportunity to learn in yeshiva, some have not, some are a little bit more life experience, some a little bit less. Everybody at the table has this obligation to tell the story. Now, I have always found this particularly troubling for one very simple reason, and that is, and maybe you or may not have shared this experience, getting through the Haggadah itself is hard enough at the Seder table with everybody gathered around, with the little kids and the older kids and the big kids and the grown-ups. Everybody wants something else at the Seder. Just getting through the Seder is, I think for most families, a challenge. Dayenu, exactly. It's hard. And some like to focus on the end and all the songs, and some have Divrei Torah on every single word in the beginning, and you can't even get to where you get started because this one's reading a whole book that they brought home from school. It's challenging. And then to say that you need to do this story several times, but really more than that, the bigger problem that I have is, even if you get through the Haggadah, I have always found, I still haven't told the story. The Haggadah wasn't set up to actually tell the story. The Haggadah is set up to provide the structure for telling the story. But it doesn't really tell the story. It just doesn't. We know about when I should start and when I have to finish and how long at night I should tell the story and who was in what city when they were telling the story, and we have 4 children, and we do mention the 10 plagues that we mention, but we also discuss were there 10 plagues at the Yom, or 50, or 200, or 400, or 600. And we can go through how many different plagues were there, but we don't necessarily do a great job of telling the story. The Haggadah wants every head of the Seder table to tell the story, to actually gather their family and tell the story. So besides getting through the Haggadah, which is really, really hard, I had long felt that I just, even after I did the Haggadah, I didn't really communicate to my children in a story form, which is what we're supposed to do. And then there's an additional challenge. How many of us are actually good storytellers and are equipped to share this story with our children? It's a skill to tell a story, and one that you think you know and your kids think you know, and they're not rolling their eye. How do you tell the story in an engaging way that actually fulfills this mitzvah in a beautiful, fun way of telling over and communicating to our children and those gathered around our Seder table? How do we do this? That was a challenge. I'm sure I'm the only one who's experienced this challenge, but you're here anyway, so I might as well tell you my answer, whether or not you share this problem. Yes, everyone know what I'm talking about? You share this problem?
We've never been there.
Never been there before, right? I figured. So I came up with the following. It's a simple game, but it's really not so simple. And I want to share it with you. My experiences with this have been phenomenal, and those who I've shared it with and have done it have similarly had a great experience with it. As you have in front of you, we have a game of bingo. Just for coming tonight, your door prize, I actually gave you all the cards you need. You don't even have to create them. You might want to redo them. It's really not hard. But let me go through how this works. It's simple, but there's a lot of different stages to actually fully be able to make this work as it is intended to. Okay, everybody have a sheets? Okay, so the game of bingo, everybody knows, works very simply. And generally bingo, so a person sitting in the front of the room, they say B26, and everybody with B26 puts a little thing on it. Very nice. That's not how we're going to play this game of bingo. That's not how we're going to play this game. You have in front of you cards. Each card in front of you is a different card. You actually have 15 different cards. So if you have more than 15 people at your Seder table, you can make new ones or you could share whatever you want to do. But you have 15 different cards in your packet. Now, you, or whoever's going to be leading the Seder, has the bingo answer key in front of you. That's in front. Don't give that one out. That's for you. That's for you, yes. Everyone see it? So now, on the left-hand side of your answer key are all the words that are actually in the bingo game. So, burning bush is an answer to the bingo game. Shifran pua, staff into snake, the white hand, public speak. All of those are actual answers on your bingo game as you see in front of you. Now, the way that this works is, you as the head of the household are going to ask questions. And the answer, once an answer is given, then allows a person to put down their chip or their piece of paper. You'll have one of your kids or grandkids cut a little piece of paper, whatever works to keep everybody busy before Pesach, on the game. So now this is how it goes. This is how it goes. There are a couple different ways to play. Now, first of all, you have to understand why this works. The reason why this works, number one, is because human beings are competitive by nature. They are. And so you're thinking, like, no one's going to want to play. They will. Not only are they going to want to play, they're going to want to win. I'm telling you. I am telling you. I had friends in Atlanta, a guy who was a business owner, and he had a bunch of people working for them. They were doing very, very well. But he had this game that he would play, this competition. It was a sales. The business was in sales. And he once told me, he said, I would have this, we'd have a board up as to where everybody was and their rankings. The prize was a $50 gift card to Starbucks. And these were people, the employees were making good money. But the $50 gift card to Starbucks, you wouldn't believe what these people would do to win. So people are competitive. So as much as you think the grown-ups aren't going to want to play, the grown-ups are going to want to play. My teenage boy, don't worry. And if you want to spice it up, which you should, get a few prizes. A couple of tchotchkes, some candy, chocolate, kosher Pre-Pesach, of course, or whatever. And the winner, if you have that, that's all you need. I'm telling you, it's all you need.
The winner gets the kidneys.
Winner gets the kidneys, you can do that would for sure work. Now, this is how this works. This is how this works. So for example, let me just go first. So you could either do this where every man for himself, everybody who's got a board, or you could divide it up. I have found dividing it up is even best. Boys versus girls, family versus family, depending whoever's at your family table, you can really play up on all of the family dynamics that you know that exist. It's great. So you can have this family versus family, boys versus girls, this side of the table, that side of the table, or just do everyone for themselves. You know your table, whatever will work, it works. The key thing is also, before you even get started, you want to tell people you're doing this, not as a surprise. Meaning, I tell my family and my guests, I say when we start, I tell them in advance at the Seder. For Magid, we play a game for Magid, and we're going to take out, as soon as we do Avadim Hayinu, we're going to take out 20 minutes, 30, 25 minutes from our Seder to play our game, and then we zip through Magid to get through everything else, because this is where we're going to fulfill the mitzvah of telling the story. It's going to happen right here, and I tell everybody, this is what we're going to do, and then after that, we're going to move until the meal, and then during the meal, everybody who has different Torah to share, that's when we do it during the meal. And every kid has their bucket, we do it during the meal, but Magid, this is Magid, and then we do the rest of Magid pretty quickly to get to the meal. Now, let's get the actual game. How does it work? So I'm leading the Seder. So, okay, ready to play. Everybody has their card. Everybody has their chips. So I ask person number one a question. Question is as follows. Using my bingo key as an example, it was here that Hashem first introduced himself to Moshe. Moshe, and I could even have a second sentence. Moshe saw this and noticed something was wrong. Now let's say it's the boys, I do boys versus girls or family versus family. A boys question. So this goes to whoever, Shlomi sitting in the... So that's what I ask. Now he's got to answer the question to be able to put down his chip. And my question was, this is the place that Hashem first introduced himself to Moshe. So he says, the burning bush. Great. All the boys, if you divide it up boys versus girls, or if you want to do everybody puts down a chip on the burning bush. Now you could do it where everybody gets to put down a chip. If one person gets it right, that also works because everybody wants to know what the answer was. You can do it so many different ways. All of that's irrelevant. The main thing is, I just asked a question at my Seder table, and I asked, this is where Hashem first introduced himself to Moshe. And somebody had to answer and say, the burning bush. Well, guess what's not otherwise spoken about at my Seder table? That's right. It doesn't come up. But that's the starting point of our story. It's a starting point, certainly. It's now been introduced to the table because I asked the question where... Now, without this little game, I have found it very hard to start just telling the story. Like, when do you do that? When do I talk about the burning bush? When do I talk about... It's hard to work it into the Seder because there's so many other things going on. I just worked it in. So, okay, everyone says burning bush, and everyone's looking for their card and putting it down. Now, this is where the game is really effective. Now we've just introduced to the table, this is where Hashem introduced himself. I now have the opportunity, leading the Seder, to ask a follow-up question, which takes all of 5-6 seconds, but we're telling a story, and I could say, hey, Shlomi, why do you think Hashem used the burning bush to introduce himself? Simple question, I just asked why. I just restated it with a why. Well, guess what's going to happen when I throw that question out? Someone's going to say a suggestion as to what's the significance of the burning bush. And we had a little dialogue that's going to take all of 30-40 seconds, and then we go, okay, next. This doesn't happen otherwise. When else do you have a little conversation about it? Great. So we now just had burning bush. If I feel that it's okay, I can throw out a question of, well, why? Why is that significant? What does it mean? Okay, great. Next question. I go, Chana. These two Jewish girls had the audacity to defy Paro. Now again, my goal in asking these questions is not to trip up the kids around my table. I want them to get it right. I want them to get it right. I just want to introduce this to the table. These two Jewish girls defied Paro. Shifra and Pua, Shifra, great. Everybody puts down Shifra and Pua. And now if I find it correct, I add a follow-up question. Why is that part of a story? What did that show? What trait did they have? Who is Shifra and Pua? What are their other names? Whatever follow-up you want, great. Whatever's appropriate. If you have a yeshiva guy at the table, I can ask a different question instead of, this requires, let me add one more thing. This requires preparation. You can't just come with this. You need to know who's at your table and who gets what questions. And if you really want to do this well, you mark your questions, what questions are for whom. Meaning, I have a second grader who's not in a Jewish school. Well, you can't just go in order and all of a sudden they get a question that they don't know. They get a question that you can think about in advance, even if you use the same card that I have. For example, one of the answers is frogs. Well, guess what? You know how many different questions you can ask where the answer is frogs? You can ask 1,000 different questions. So you just have to have in advance, these are the people coming to my Seder table, and I have marked off, when I get to so-and-so, I want to ask them a question, I want to engage them. So for them, I'm going to ask, what was the second plague? Or I can ask, what was the plague that was the noisy plague? Or what was you can ask whatever you want. And if you want to ask some advanced questions, so with a little bit of research, you open up a chumash, and you can ask some pretty tricky questions that the guy who thinks he's been in yeshiva, he's going to ask. You can ask some tough questions, just all a little bit of thought process. What happens through this game, as I said, people are competitive, they want to win. And you have the ability to introduce to your table the conversation. If you literally go through, even if you split this in half and you did every other one, you did it, I would recommend doing it in order because I set it up. This literally tells the story. And you've done it in a fun way, in a question and answer. And if you start from the beginning and you get to you've really introduced almost the entire story. So if you do every other one the first night and then do the other ones the second night, you've just simply introduced to your table a conversation. And you can have follow-up questions that are really very easy to follow up with and create dialogue and engagement. At the end of the day, what we're interested in is engagement at our tables. That our grown-ups, the kids, and everybody in between is engaged in a conversation about this story. And it's hard to do otherwise. But if you have a game, now you could do it, when do you win? So it depends. How much time do you have? How much attention do you have before you need to move on? One single row, great. Call it a game, move on to the rest of Magid. 2 rows, 3 rows. If it's going really well, the first person to finish their board. You need to know your table and how long it works. I am simply stating that by doing this, you can literally introduce to your table all of the necessary components. And with a little bit of forethought in advance, where you can mark off, these are my suggestions. If you find that these topics are beyond your table or too easy for your table, I think it's on your sheet, like bingo.net. There are 1,000 websites that for free, you plug in your words and they'll make you 15 boards. It doesn't cost you anything. It costs you 10 minutes. So you want to add in something else, and I highly suggest this. You want to add in personal family history. You have a parent, grandparent, and yourself a survivor, and you want to add into the Pesach story family history of where a family is from. Make up your own board. Add in a couple of points. That is, the answer is Bobby and the city where so-and-so came from in Europe, or whatever day they came from. Easy schmeezy. You do whatever you want. And you just plug it into 1,000 easy websites. You have your board, and it works as being able to do so. It requires a little bit of advanced preparation. To know it, you don't want to get stuck asking a question to the wrong person, and everyone you want it to get everything right. But it simply allows the conversation to go. And if you take it, you could either do it. If you don't like my suggestion of doing it during Magid, you could just run through Magid as you normally do, and during the meal. This is our mealtime game. Whatever works. You need to know your family, and you need to know in advance. You don't spring this on your family sitting around the table without them knowing it. Don't try that. That doesn't work. Because everyone's thinking like, this is so long, when are we going to eat it? And all of a sudden you pull out, I got a game for everybody, and you start handing out cards and chips, and everyone is like, they're ready to kill you. But if you tell them in advance, I'm telling you, if you tell them in advance, this is how we're doing it. We're going to take 20 minutes, and we're going to tell the story through the game. And we're going to zip through Magid. It works, and it's a great environment. And again, if you play up the competition, whether or not you do family, boys, girls, or random sides of the table, it works. It just works, and the conversation is there for you to have. So anyway, I've given you 15 guards with a key, and totally welcome to do it. You go around the room, you ask questions. Each person gets a question. And the easiest is just where everybody gets to put down the chip when anybody gets the question right, because that keeps everybody listening to all of the questions to make sure that they get it. But if you keep in mind, again, the main objective is to be able to introduce the conversations to your table. This is really it's a great tool. We have found it very, very successful, and it works. So I share that. Questions, comments.
Sounds great.
Your question? Yeah.
Okay, so why did God introduce himself to Moshe and Berger?
So I'm not going to answer that, and I'm not going to answer it on purpose. The purpose of asking the questions to almost every single thing you can answer, you can ask a follow-up question. Let's say you get to blood, and you could ask, why do you think blood was the first plague? You do not need to have the answer. Hashem commanded us, each and every person, to tell the story, not to become a Gadol Hador for the Leil HaSeder. You don't have to have every answer. You have to have a conversation at your table about this story. And it is not a problem if you throw out a question and say, why do you think the burning bush? and Aunt Susie has one answer, and Uncle Harry has a different answer, and you say, well, that's very interesting. We've now, if you happen to have an answer that you want to share, that's great. You want to have a dialogue about the story. You'll have answers, so sometimes the more you prepare, the better it is. But the fact that you can get your table having a conversation about what they think was the meaning of the burning bush is great. And you'll have the active, passionate dialogue is the way that we pass on the story from one generation to the next. We give people a chance to have the conversation and to have the thoughts. This is my suggestion. If you really want to make it work, you got to know your table, and you go through the questions that I ask, and you think to yourself, is that the best way that I would ask? Maybe there's a different way you want to ask it. Without preparation, nothing works. But this is a great start to be able to do so. I highly recommend it, and I just wanted to share that as far as that goes. I promised too. I have a second one, but the second one's like graduate level work, and I have very little time left. I could quickly share it, but if you can't do 2 in 1 year, so if you think this will work, I tried it. It doesn't work. Like this, yeah, it's like too much. But maybe we'll do it next year. I'll share the other one within the next one. Anyway, let me know if it works. If you want an electronic version, I can email you this. I highly recommend if you want to have your own personal take on it and add in certain things is also great. You just need to make sure that somebody has some chips. You give somebody the job of either cutting out little squares of paper, or if you have poker chips or whatever else you need to make sure that's there. Piece of matzah. Not with you want to make it into gebrachs. You can do all sorts of interesting things with this to make it work. But just wanted to share that at the end. Really, we had the first hour of real learning. This is just a little bit of fun and games to hopefully make your Seder table an engaging place for everybody. I have found it extremely successful. I hope you'll try it and give me some feedback whether or not it worked or it didn't work. Come up with your own questions. Come up with your own boards. It's all available online to make your own boards if you'd like. And thank you all for coming out tonight to learn and hopefully make your Seder a more enjoyable experience for everyone at every level.